At my husband's funeral, I got a message that changed everything. It was from an unknown number, 4 words that shattered my world. I'm still alive. Trust no one. Pause. The sound of a phone buzzing echoes in silence. Narrator, tone deepens. From that moment, I stopped being a widow and became a target. My name is Margot Hayes, and this is the story of how I uncovered the secret my husband died to protect. My name is Margot Hayes, and I'm 66 years old. What I'm about to tell you changed my life forever. It began on the quietest day of my existence, the day I buried my husband, Ernest Hayes. Visual, rows of black chairs, people whispering, white lilies near the casket. The funeral was small. Ernest never liked big crowds, even when he was alive. He was a retired detective, a man who believed in order, in truth, and in silence. So when the priest finished his eulogy and the first shovel of dirt fell onto the casket, the only sound I heard was the dull thud of earth swallowing a life that had built mine. I remember clutching my phone, not because I was waiting for anyone to call, but because my hands didn't know what else to do. That's when it buzzed. Just one short vibration, sharp enough to slice through grief. I looked down. Unknown number. I'm alive. That's not me in the casket. Trust no one. For a second, my mind refused to connect those words into meaning. The letters seemed to rearrange themselves like a cruel hallucination, but they stayed, glowing coldly against the rain-streaked glass. I almost dropped the phone into the mud. Visual, tight shot of Margot's trembling fingers, phone screen flickering. I looked around. Everyone's faces were drawn in the same pale expression of solemnity. My daughter, the priest, even Ernest's old partner, Detective Cole Abrams, who stood with his hands folded over a black umbrella, his eyes unreadable. No one was looking at me. No one seemed to have sent it. But someone had. And the message came from Ernest's number. Music, low-string tension builds. I wanted to scream, to ask, is this some kind of joke? But the words died in my throat. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my coat pocket, pressing it close to my chest as if to quiet the pulse that thundered beneath it. When the ceremony ended, people approached me with the kind of practiced sympathy that fills the silence after a loss. I smiled politely, nodded, and said the right things. But I barely heard a word. All I could think about was that message. Visual transition. Dusk falls over the cemetery, slow pan to Margot's empty home. That night, I sat in our living room, the one Ernest had filled with his detective novels and quiet habits. The fireplace was cold. His armchair still carried the shape of his body. I replayed the funeral over and over in my mind. Every face, every moment. Could someone have hacked his number? But who would? And why? I finally opened the message again. The timestamp read 11:32 a.m., exactly when they lowered his casket into the ground. I felt a chill run down my spine. Soft flicker of a lamp. Margot looks at Ernest's photograph. Ernest had always been a man of secrets. Not the unfaithful kind. He loved me, that much I knew. But even love couldn't touch the deeper layers of his work. Whenever I asked about old cases, he'd smile and say, "The past sleeps better when left alone, Margot." He never said my full name. Always Margot. Only once, near the end, had he whispered it differently. "Margot, promise me you'll be careful if anything ever seems off." At the time, I thought it was the pain talking. Now I wasn't so sure. Visual, close-up of an old leather notebook on a desk. Around midnight, I went through his belongings, the ones the hospital had returned. His watch, his wedding ring, a pen, and a small black notebook. Ernest carried that notebook everywhere, but when I opened it, I saw something that made my breath catch. Every page was covered with his neat, looping handwriting, names, dates, places, but most of it had been crossed out, violently, as if he'd wanted to erase everything he'd ever known. Except for one word. Written dead center on the last page, circled 3 times in red ink. Revive. Music, distant thunder, slow heartbeat rhythm. I stared at the word until my eyes blurred. Revive. Did he mean resurrection? Restart? Or was it a name? I didn't sleep that night. The house felt wrong, too still, too expectant, as if the walls themselves were waiting for me to understand. At 3:17 a.m., I heard a faint sound, a single click from the kitchen. Visual flashlight beam sweeps across the dark hall. I froze, listening. Then again, click. It wasn't the fridge or the heater. It was the sound of a door latch. I grabbed the closest thing, a heavy brass candle holder, and crept toward the noise. The kitchen window was open. Rain had blown in, soaking the counter. And there, in the puddle of water, lay muddy footprints. Fresh. They led from the window toward the living room, then stopped right beneath Ernest's armchair. Nothing else was disturbed. No sign of forced entry. Just those footprints. And on the armchair, a folded note. Visual. Camera pans in on note under flickering lamplight. I unfolded it with shaking hands. It wasn't written by Ernest. The handwriting was blocky, unfamiliar, but deliberate. You're being watched. Don't trust Abrams. Look under the oak. I looked toward the window again. Outside, in the backyard, stood the old oak tree where Ernest used to hang a bird feeder. The rain shimmered around it like a curtain of fog. I should have called the police right then. But I didn't. Because the note mentioned Abrams, the detective who'd been at the funeral, the one man I would have called for help. Instead, I threw on a coat, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the rain. Visual, handheld style footage, rain glistening off leaves, thunder rumbling. The ground was soft, every step sinking into mud. When I reached the oak, the beam of my flashlight caught something half buried at its roots, a small metal tin. I knelt, my hands trembling as I dug it free. Inside was a cassette tape. A cassette. Who even used those anymore? Written across the label in Ernest's unmistakable scrawl were 2 words. Play alone. Music fades to eerie silence. Back inside, I searched the house for something that could play it. In Ernest's study, I found his old tape recorder, the one he used to use when reviewing case notes. I pressed play. A crackle of static. Then his voice. Ernest recorded. If you're hearing this, Margot, then things didn't go as planned. My knees went weak. It was him. Don't contact the police. Don't trust anyone, especially Cole Abrams. He's not who he says he is. I can't explain everything yet, but you'll find the rest where it all began. The truth is buried, and they're going to come for it. For you. The tape hissed and clicked off. I stared at it, waiting for more. But that was it. 31 seconds. Visual. Candle flickers out. Camera zooms slowly on Margot's shocked face. That was the moment I knew. Either my husband was still alive, or someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make me believe he was. Transition scene. Early morning light through curtains. The next morning the world looked the same. But I didn't. Coffee tasted like nothing. The newspaper headlines blurred into white noise. Every shadow seemed to have weight. When I stepped outside to check the mailbox, a black car sat idling across the street. Tinted windows, no plates. I stood there for a long time, pretending to read a flyer. The car didn't move, but I could feel eyes on me. That night, it was gone. Visual montage, Margot researching, flipping pages, pinning photos. Over the next few days, I went through every inch of Ernest's study. Behind a row of dusty law books, I found a small key taped to the back of a shelf. It was engraved with a number, S107. The next page in his notebook, the one before Revive, had a scribbled address and the letters STOR partially smudged out. Storage. Ernest had a locker. I looked up the address. It was across town, a place called Lock Safe Depot. Visual, gray afternoon, Margot drives slowly through industrial area. The manager was a young man with kind eyes who seemed uneasy when I gave him the key number. You said you're Mrs. Hayes? Yes. Strange, he said. Your husband came by, about a week before he passed. He told me no one else was allowed access. Did he say why? No, ma'am. Just that if anyone came asking, I should make sure they had this. He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a receipt dated 3 days before his death, with a single line written at the bottom in Ernest's handwriting. If something happens, she'll find me. Visual. Margot inserts key, rolls up the storage door. Inside the locker was a single cardboard box sealed with tape. On the lid, again, that same word in red marker, revive. I peeled the tape and opened it. Inside were dozens of old case files, photographs, and a small USB drive marked Hayden Project. The name meant nothing to me, but the way it was underlined 3 times told me everything I needed to know. This was what Ernest had died for, or pretended to. I slipped the USB into my purse and hurried home. Visual, night falls, laptop screen glows in the dark. When I plugged it in, the screen flickered once, then went completely black. Lines of text flashed for half a second before vanishing. Then, a single message appeared in the center of the screen. You were warned. And just like that, the power went out. Music, rising tension, heartbeat drum. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, staring at my reflection in the black glass. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Then 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the house. Visual, close-up of Margot's eyes, fade to black. Narrator, quietly. That was the moment I realized the message was right. Ernest might still be alive, but if he was, I wasn't the only one looking for him. They came again. 3 knocks, measured, calm, too deliberate to be random. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The flashlight beam shook in my hand as I stared at the front door. Then, a voice. Deep, familiar. Margot? It's Cole Abrams. Visual. Door opens halfway, rain dripping off Cole's trench coat. Detective Cole Abrams, my husband's old partner, the man Ernest had warned me not to trust. He stood under the porch light, soaked from the storm, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry for dropping by so late, he said. There's been an incident. May I come in? Every instinct screamed no, but I stepped aside anyway. He glanced around the dark house, his eyes pausing on the faint glow from my laptop. Power cut? Yes, I lied. Just went out. He nodded slowly, as if weighing every word. Then he looked straight at me. You've been getting messages, haven't you? Music, slow violin, edge of dread. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to freeze. I didn't answer. He sighed, removed his hat, and ran a hand through wet hair. You need to tell me, Margot. If someone's contacting you, pretending to be Ernest, it could be dangerous. Pretending? I repeated softly. Cole's jaw tightened. I know this sounds cruel, but he's gone. I saw his body. I signed the report myself. Something in his voice cracked slightly, almost like guilt. I crossed my arms. Then tell me, detective, why did he leave a note saying not to trust you? Visual, lightning flash illuminates Cole's uneasy face. He went still. For several seconds, the only sound was the storm outside. Then he gave a short laugh, humorless, forced. You've been through a lot. Grief does strange things to the mind. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Ernest was working on a sensitive case before he died, something internal. If he left notes or recordings, they might be part of that investigation. And if anyone else finds them, they'll twist the story. So you want them, I said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. For safekeeping. I almost believed him until I noticed something. A faint smear of mud on his left cuff. Same pattern, same color as the footprints under my window last night. Music, bass pulse, close-up of Margot's narrowed eyes. I forced a polite smile. I'll keep that in mind, detective. He lingered by the door, waiting, as if expecting me to hand something over. When I didn't, he nodded once and said, If anything else happens, call me. Don't talk to anyone else, please. As soon as he left, I locked every door and window. Then I went back to the study, replaying the tape in my head. You'll find the rest where it all began. Visual, dawn breaking over small suburban street. The next morning, sunlight poured weakly through the curtains. The power was back. I turned on the lamp beside the notebook Ernest had left. His handwriting looked more fragile in daylight, but something caught my attention now that hadn't before. Tiny dots beneath certain letters, almost invisible, a pattern. I took a magnifying glass from his desk drawer and traced them carefully. The dots formed a sequence, small, large, like Morse code. I compared them to a reference chart online. The letters spelled out one word, Holloway. Visual, map unfolding across desk, Margot circles a location. There's a Holloway Street downtown, a dead end near the old train yard. Ernest used to work cases there in the 90s. If that's where it all began, maybe that's where I'd find the truth. I packed the notebook, the cassette, and a small revolver Ernest kept locked in his cabinet. It felt absurd, holding it, like pretending to be him. But the fear sitting in my chest wouldn't let me leave without it. Visual. Margot drives slowly through an industrial area, morning fog hanging low. Narrator. The city looked different that morning, harsher, older, as if every building remembered something I didn't. At the end of Holloway Street stood a boarded-up warehouse, half swallowed by ivy. A sign barely clung to its rusted gate. Hayden Storage. That name again. Hayden. I parked around the corner and walked in. The air smelled of damp concrete and dust. My footsteps echoed through the emptiness. Then, in the far corner, I saw it, painted faintly on a door. Revive. R. Music, low piano note. Tension thickens. I pushed the door open. Inside was a small office, papers scattered, a chair overturned. On the desk sat a tape recorder identical to Ernest's, and beside it, a single photograph. Ernest. Taken recently. He was standing beside a car, wearing clothes I'd never seen before, and on the back of the photo, in blue ink, "Don't stop." They're watching me too. My hands began to shake. I pressed play on the tape recorder. A man's voice crackled through the static. Not Ernest. Someone else. Younger, impatient. Package secured. Subject Hayes alive but compromised. Proceed with extraction to site H7. Then silence. The tape clicked off. Alive, compromised, extraction. What had my husband gotten himself into? Visual, quick cuts, Margot stuffing evidence into bag, glancing around nervously. That's when I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from the hallway. I ducked behind the desk just as the door creaked open. Through a crack in the wood, I saw a man step inside, tall, wearing dark tactical clothing. He scanned the room, muttered something into an earpiece. Locker cleared. No sign of her. Her. Me. I held my breath until the sound of his boots faded down the hall. Then I ran. Music, fast strings, rain resumes outside. I didn't stop until I reached my car. My heart slammed against my ribs as I fumbled the keys. Just before I started the engine, I noticed something wedged under my windshield wiper. A small folded piece of paper. You're close. Trust the code. No signature, no explanation. I drove home with shaking hands, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. The same black sedan followed me for 2 blocks, then disappeared. Visual. Margot back in her kitchen, storm clouds gathering again. That night, I sat with Ernest's notebook spread open on the table, trying to make sense of the word revive again. It wasn't just a word. It was an acronym. I wrote down possible meanings, crossing each out. Then something clicked. REVIVE, Ernest's style. He loved codes built from case names. If I applied that logic, I flipped through his files until one caught my eye. Recovered evidence, victim identification, verification, extraction. Each first letter, REVIVE. It wasn't just a word. It was a protocol, a system he'd built. And Hayden Project, that must have been the operation behind it. Music, soft ticking clock, low suspense hum. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number, this time only coordinates, latitude and longitude. I copied them into Google Maps. They pointed to a location on the edge of town, the old Riverside Clinic, closed for 20 years, the place where Ernest and Cole had worked their first joint case. Visual, twilight sky, Margot drives through abandoned district. The clinic looked like something out of a dream. Windows shattered, ivy crawling up cracked walls. I stepped through the broken front doors. Inside, dust hung thick in the air. The faint smell of antiseptic still lingered, ghost-like. Then I saw it, scrawled in chalk on the tiled wall. Remember room 17. Music, heartbeat pulse grows louder. Room 17 was at the end of a long corridor. The floor creaked with every step. When I reached it, the door was half open. Inside, rows of metal cabinets lined the walls, old patient files. I searched through them until one folder fell open in my hands. Patient, Ernest Hayes. Date, 2 weeks before his death. Attached to the file was a single X-ray image of a chest cavity, and scribbled across it, in Ernest's handwriting, fake identity confirmed, burial authorization, staged. I felt the world tilt. He had faked it. He was alive. Visual, flashback montage, funeral scenes, Ernest's hand on Margot's shoulder, slow fade to the message on phone. Every second since that funeral replayed in my mind. The coldness of his skin in the coffin, the sealed casket, how quickly everything had been handled. It was all too neat, too controlled. I sank to the floor, clutching the file, and whispered, "Why, Ernest? Why?" That's when the sound came again, footsteps, deliberate, echoing down the hall. Not one pair this time. 2. Music, rising drums, flashlight flickers. I turned off my light and crouched behind a cabinet. Voices floated in through the doorway. Man 1. Cole said she might come here. Man 2. Orders are to bring her in alive. If she has the drive, we recover it. Cole. He'd sent them. I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. The footsteps stopped just outside. One of them shone a flashlight inside. The beam swept across the cabinets and paused on the folder I'd dropped. She's here. I bolted. Visual, shaky cam chase sequence through dark hallway. The corridors blurred as I ran, breath ragged, adrenaline pounding. A door to the side, emergency exit. I pushed through it and burst into the cold night. Gunshots cracked behind me, sparks flew off metal. I ducked behind an old ambulance, heart hammering. In the distance, sirens wailed, but they weren't coming for me. Whoever these men were, they had the kind of authority that didn't wait for permission. Music softens. Camera follows Margot limping home under streetlights. By the time I reached home, dawn was threatening the horizon. My clothes were torn, shoes ruined, but I still clutched the folder. I locked every door, pulled down the blinds, and stared at the file again. The photo of Ernest's chest X-ray glared back like an accusation. There was one more page beneath it, a short note typed. Final phase of revive, stage death, remove subject from registry, initiate safe contact once target neutralized. Target, who was the target? And then I noticed a small handwritten addition at the bottom, a single word in Ernest's familiar cursive. Cole. Music, single low piano note, thunder rolls outside. Everything inside me went cold. Ernest had been protecting himself from Cole, and maybe from something even bigger. I didn't have long to think, because the phone rang again, this time a voice call, not a message. The number was blocked. I hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice whispered, "He's alive. But not for long if you stay where you are. They're already inside." Then the line went dead. Visual, camera whip to door handle turning slowly. From the hallway came the faint creak of a floorboard. Then, the unmistakable click of a lock being forced open. I grabbed the revolver from the table and stepped back into the shadows. The door opened. A figure stepped inside, tall, soaked from rain, holding something in his hand. The light from the street lamp caught his face. Cole Abrams. Music stops. Eerie silence. He looked at me like a teacher scolding a child. "I told you not to dig, Margot," he said quietly. "You should have just let him rest." "Rest?" I hissed. "You mean disappear?" He sighed. "You don't understand what he did. What he stole. He wasn't a hero, Margot. He was compromised. He played both sides. And now, you've put yourself in danger too." He took a step closer. I raised the gun. "Don't," he said gently. "You won't pull that trigger." I did, or tried to. But the gun just clicked. Empty. He smiled, a tired, broken smile. "He took the bullets, didn't he? Always one step ahead." He moved toward me. I backed away until my hand brushed something cold on the counter. The cassette tape. Without thinking, I grabbed it and hurled it at him. It hit his shoulder and shattered on the floor. The tape unspooled across the tiles, revealing something taped beneath the reel, a tiny flash drive. Cole froze, staring at it, then lunged, but I was faster. Visual. Margot grabs flash drive, runs toward back door, rain pouring outside. I dashed out the back door, barefoot, clutching the drive in my fist. Behind me, Cole shouted my name, once, furious, echoing through the storm. I didn't look back. Music, swelling cinematic orchestra, rain intensifies. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing at the edge of the old park where Ernest used to feed the birds. There, beneath the oak tree, I opened my hand. The flash drive gleamed faintly in the dawn light, a final clue Ernest had hidden even from me. I didn't know what was on it, but I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't about a faked death anymore. This was a war Ernest had started, and somehow I was the only one left to finish it. Camera pans up from Margot's trembling hands to the sunrise breaking through clouds. Narrator, softly. And somewhere, in the shadows of the waking city, a man who was supposed to be dead watched me from afar. The drive to the lake house felt longer than it should have. Every bend in the road looked the same. Dark trees pressed close on both sides, their branches interlaced above like hands praying for mercy. By the time I reached the old property Ernest and I once owned, the rain had started. Heavy, unrelenting, like the world itself wanted to wash something clean. The house was just as I remembered. Pale blue paint faded to gray, a wooden porch sagging slightly, and the faint smell of pine sap and lake water in the air. But as I stepped closer, I realized something chilling. The porch light was on. We hadn't paid electricity bills on this place for years. My hands trembled as I pushed open the front door. It creaked, slowly, mournfully. Inside, dust covered everything, but the faint warmth in the air and a half-empty cup of coffee on the table told me I wasn't the first person here tonight. "Ernest?" I whispered. My voice cracked on his name. No answer, only the rain on the roof. Then, from upstairs, a single footstep, a voice from the past. I froze, every muscle locked. My breath came out in sharp, uneven bursts. "Who's there?" A man's voice answered, low, hesitant, and heartbreakingly familiar. "Margot?" The sound made my knees buckle. I clung to the banister for balance. "Ernest?" He appeared at the top of the stairs. His hair was longer, streaked with gray, his face thinner, his eyes sunken, but alive. Alive. For a second, the world tilted. I wanted to run to him, to touch his face, to prove it was real. But then my eyes fell on the faint scar along his temple, the kind he never had before. "Is it really you?" I asked, my voice trembling. He took a slow step forward. "It's me, Margot." I didn't die. They made it look that way. "They?" He nodded. "I had to send the message. I couldn't let you fall into the same trap. The truth about his death." We sat in the dim light of the living room, facing each other like strangers. Rain lashed against the windows as he spoke. "I found something I wasn't supposed to," he said quietly. "Before the heart attack, before the funeral, I was working on a new investment deal. But it wasn't just business, Margot. It was laundering." I frowned. Laundering? For politicians, corporate men, people with power. I was meant to manage the accounts, make the numbers clean. But I found inconsistencies, and people who didn't exist. When I tried to pull out, they warned me. A week later, I got a call saying there'd been an accident at work. My heart pounded. "So you faked your death?" "I had no choice. They made it look like a heart attack, swapped my medical reports. A friend in the coroner's office helped me, and then disappeared a month later. I didn't want you in danger. That's why I sent that message. Trust no one." He leaned forward, eyes glinting in the low light. "Even your sister, Margot. Especially her." My stomach dropped. "Helen? She's all I have left." He shook his head. "Helen's been in contact with them. I saw her name on the wire transfers. She's been managing their finances. Helen's betrayal." The next morning, I drove back home in silence. My mind was a storm, my husband alive, my sister possibly betraying me. The world no longer made sense. When I got home, Helen was waiting, sitting at my kitchen table with coffee and a worried smile. "You look pale," she said softly. "Rough night?" I stared at her. "You could say that." Her eyes flicked briefly toward my coat, and I realized she was searching for something. Proof. "How's the grieving widow holding up?" she asked, her tone too smooth, too rehearsed. That's when I knew. "Don't," I whispered. "Don't pretend anymore." She tilted her head, feigning confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Ernest, he's alive." Her eyes froze for a split second. Barely perceptible, but enough. "Margot, you need rest." "Don't lie to me," I shouted, slamming my hands on the table. "You worked with them. The accounts, the transfers. Ernest saw your name." Her smile vanished. "You should have stayed quiet," she said coldly. Before I could react, she stood, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "You think you can stop what's coming? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Then she walked out, calm, deliberate, as if my house wasn't collapsing in secrets. The surveillance. After she left, I tore the house apart. And then I found it. A tiny camera tucked behind the living room clock, another in the smoke detector, one more in the hallway light fixture. I smashed them all, shaking, tears blurring my vision. They'd been watching me, listening, even after the funeral. I called Ernest. No answer. Just static. When I went back to the lake house that night, it was empty. The coffee cup gone, the dust disturbed, but no sign of him. Only a new note on the table written in his handwriting. "They found me. Don't call the police. Trust no one. Follow the trail. It starts with the funeral director. The trail begins." The next morning, I stood outside the Holloway funeral home, rain soaking through my coat. The director, Mr. Crane, was a tall, soft-spoken man who had handled Ernest's burial. When he saw me, his face went pale. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, voice shaking, "I didn't expect to see you." "I need to know who arranged my husband's body transfer," I said. "All of it. Every document." He hesitated. I can't. There are privacy protocols." I slid a photo of Ernest across the counter. "He's alive, Mr. Crane. Help me, or you'll be next." The color drained from his face. He looked around, then whispered, "It wasn't supposed to go that far. They said it was just paperwork, a substitute body, a closed casket. I didn't know they'd actually." He stopped himself. "Who are they?" He swallowed hard. "You need to leave. Now." As I turned to go, I caught sight of something in the reflection of the door's glass. A man standing across the street in a dark coat, watching me. When I blinked, he was gone. End of part 3. Margot now knows Ernest is alive but hunted. Her sister Helen is tied to a powerful group. She's being watched, and the trail leads back to the people who buried a stranger in her husband's grave. The rain had stopped by morning, but the world still looked bruised. Gray clouds hanging low, the air thick with the kind of silence that feels like a warning. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the note Ernest left behind. Follow the trail. It starts with the funeral director. Mr. Crane's terrified face still haunted me. He knew more than he said. And that man outside, the one watching me through the rain, I could feel his eyes even now. I decided not to call anyone. No police, no neighbors, no Helen. Trust no one. Ernest's words echoed through my mind like a heartbeat. A funeral home secret. At noon, I returned to Holloway Funeral Home. It was locked, the blinds drawn. I circled around to the back, where the air smelled of wet concrete and embalming fluid. A back door hung slightly open. Inside, the faint hum of refrigeration filled the dim hallway. I moved quietly, my steps soundless against the tile. In the office, papers were scattered across the desk. Among them, I found a file labeled E. Hayes Transfer Request, dated one day before the funeral. But the signature at the bottom wasn't Ernest's. It wasn't even mine. It was Helen's. My throat went dry. She had authorized the entire process, the sealed casket, the fake ID of the body donor, even the medical examiner's final confirmation. My sister had buried a stranger and pretended it was my husband. A stranger's name. There was a second file beneath it. The name caught my eye immediately. Subject: Lucas Vance. Age: 52. Height: 6'1". Build: medium. Status: deceased. Cardiac arrest. Transfer destination: Holloway Funeral Home, the same day as Ernest's death. My stomach clenched. Lucas Vance had been the man in the coffin, a perfect stand-in. Similar height, similar build. His body had been substituted. But why him? And then I saw it. A note scribbled in the corner in Crane's handwriting. Payment cleared via Evermere Holdings. Recipient: H. Price. Helen. Again. The encounter. Looking for something? The voice froze my blood. I turned slowly. Mr. Crane stood in the doorway, his face pale, eyes red-rimmed. He looked exhausted. I had to come back, I said quietly. You owe me answers. He shook his head, trembling. You shouldn't be here. They'll come for both of us. Who are they? Crane's voice dropped to a whisper. Evermere Holdings isn't just a company. It's a front. Offshore accounts used to launder campaign funds, pay bribes, and disappear people who know too much. Your husband got too close. Your sister. He stopped. The front door creaked. Footsteps. Crane's eyes widened. Go. Now. I slipped out the back as two men entered through the front. One of them wore the same dark coat I'd seen outside yesterday. As I drove away, I saw in my rearview mirror the glow of flames. The funeral home was burning. Mr. Crane was gone. The safe deposit box. That night, I tore through the house again, searching every drawer and folder for something, anything Ernest might have left behind. Finally, in an old jewelry box, I found a key. Stamped on it, Evermere Bank, Box 317. It had to be connected. The next morning, I drove into the city. The bank was sleek and modern, its glass facade reflecting the gray sky. The clerk glanced at the key, then at me. Identification? I slid my driver's license across. She scanned it, then frowned slightly. Ah, yes, Mrs. Hayes. Box 317. Please follow me. The vault smelled faintly metallic. She left me alone with the box. Inside was a small stack of documents and a flash drive. The first page read, Project Cerberus, Phase 3, Asset Integration. I skimmed the files, financial charts, offshore transfers, political donors, code names, Argus, Falcon, Orchid, and then one line stopped me cold. Phase 4 Implementation. Transfer ownership of Hayes Estate to Price Trust Holdings. My sister's last name. Helen Price. She wasn't just involved. She was inheriting everything. The flash drive. Back home, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It opened a series of encrypted folders. Only one file was accessible, a video. The screen flickered to life. Ernest appeared, sitting in a dark room. His face was gaunt, but his voice steady. "Margot, if you're seeing this, they've found me. I tried to stop them, but Helen's too deep in. She's not the sister you remember. She's been working for Evermere for years. The money they move, it funds politicians, arms deals, even disappearances. They used me to cover their tracks." He leaned closer to the camera. "They killed Lucas Vance because he was about to expose them. They put his body in my casket to keep the illusion alive. Helen arranged it. She took my place in their chain, and she'll come for you next." He hesitated, eyes dark. "If I don't make it back, go to the cabin near the lake. Look under the floorboards in the study. That's where I hid the ledger, the proof. Don't trust anyone, Margot, not even the police." The video ended. For a long moment, I just sat there, frozen. My husband's warning had come too late. The attack. That night, as I packed a bag to head to the lake house again, I heard something outside, a crunch of gravel. Then, a knock at the door, 3 sharp taps. I peered through the curtain. A car idled in the driveway. Black, tinted windows. "Mrs. Hayes?" A man's voice called softly. "Police. We'd like to ask you some questions." I didn't move. Then I saw the reflection in the side mirror. The man had no badge. And the second figure beside him was Helen. They were coming for me. I ran out the back, into the woods. The rain had started again, heavy and relentless. Behind me, I heard Helen shouting, her voice sharp with rage. "Margot! Don't make this harder than it has to be!" Branches tore at my coat as I ran toward the car, hidden by the old maple tree. My hands shook as I started the engine. Headlights flared behind me. They were chasing me. The ledger. Hours later, I reached the lake cabin. The storm had eased into a slow, cold drizzle. I rushed inside, shut the door, and locked it. The house smelled like damp wood and memory. I tore up the carpet in the study, pried open the floorboards, and there, beneath layers of dust, was a small metal box. Inside, a worn leather ledger, several hard drives, and a photo. It was Ernest and Helen, together, smiling, standing in front of the Evermere headquarters. The date stamped on the back was 2 years before his death. He'd been working with her all along. My knees went weak. Had he been protecting me or using me? The call. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Margot," a voice whispered. It was Ernest. "They found the ledger, didn't they?" he said. My heart pounded. "Where are you?" "Close," he said. "But listen to me. That ledger is the key. Evermere's entire operation depends on it. Don't destroy it. Don't hand it over." "Why should I trust you?" I said bitterly. "You lied to me for years. You faked your death." He sighed. "I did it to protect you. Helen wanted me dead, but I had to play along. You're the only one who can finish this." "Finish what?" A pause. Then, "The Price Trust isn't just a name, Margot. It's a bloodline. Your family has been tied to Evermere for decades. Helen inherited it. You rejected it. That's why they chose me, to keep it under control." I felt dizzy. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Ernest said softly, "that none of us were innocent. Not me, not Helen, not even you." The line went dead. The rain had stopped by dawn, but fog still clung to the lake like a ghost that refused to leave. I hadn't slept. The ledger lay open on the table, its pages heavy with secrets, coded transactions, political names, corporate signatures, and cryptic initials that matched accounts all over the world. And there, written in my sister's handwriting on the last page, was one name circled twice in red ink: Margot Hayes. My blood ran cold. I wasn't just part of this. I was a piece of it, the truth beneath the ledger. I flipped back through the pages. The oldest entries dated decades ago, before Helen or I were even born. Every generation, someone in our family had managed the Price Trust holdings. It wasn't a normal inheritance, it was a financial weapon. They funneled money for politicians, defense contractors, and men who wore suits like armor. Ernest had married into it, but instead of controlling it quietly, he'd tried to expose them. That's why they had to erase him. But where did that leave me? My hands trembled as I traced my name on the ledger. The date beside it was only a week old. The note next to it said, "Transfer pending, upon confirmation of death certificate." My death certificate. They hadn't just buried Ernest. They planned to bury me next. The knock at the cabin. Just as the realization sank in, I heard the faint crunch of gravel outside. Headlights flickered through the fog. Someone was here. I turned off the lamp and grabbed the revolver Ernest had kept hidden in the drawer. I never thought I'd have to use it. A silhouette moved past the window. Then, a soft knock. "Margot?" a familiar voice called. "It's me. Helen." I didn't move. "Please, just listen," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to stop this before it goes any further." I unlocked the door halfway, keeping the gun hidden behind my leg. Helen stood in the doorway, drenched from the fog, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "You look awful," she said softly. "You haven't been sleeping, have you?" "Cut the act," I said. "You faked Ernest's death. You watched them burn down the funeral home, and you've been planning mine." Her expression barely changed, a faint twitch of her jaw, nothing more. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It was never supposed to go this far. Ernest was supposed to disappear quietly, but he got greedy." Greedy? For control. He didn't want to expose Evermere, Margot. He wanted to own it. He found the ledger before I could, and when I refused to help, he turned on me. She took a step closer. "You think he's your hero, but he's not. He used you just like he used me." I aimed the gun at her. "Then why fake his death?" Helen's eyes met mine, calm, deadly calm. "Because Evermere doesn't tolerate weakness. If they thought Ernest was dead, they'd stop watching us. It was the only way to survive. The hunter becomes the hunted." Before I could respond, a window shattered. A bullet tore through the wall behind me. Helen screamed and ducked. Another shot hit the lamp, sending sparks across the room. "Get down!" I shouted. Outside, I saw a shadow move near the tree line, a man with a rifle. I recognized the stance, the build, the deliberate precision. Ernest. I grabbed Helen's arm and pulled her toward the back door. We sprinted into the fog, our feet sinking into the wet grass. "Why is he shooting at us?" Helen cried. "Maybe because you lied to both of us," I hissed. But deep down, I didn't know. Ernest had warned me not to trust anyone, even him. Maybe this was part of his plan all along. The truth in the woods. We ran until the cabin was just a smudge behind us. My lungs burned, my clothes soaked with mist. Then, through the fog, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Ernest. He lowered the rifle slowly, his face unreadable. "Enough running," he said. "Both of you." Helen took a step back. "You tried to kill us." He shook his head. "I was shooting at the men following you. Evermere's cleanup team. They were right behind you." As if on cue, faint shouts echoed in the distance. Ernest looked at me. "Do you have it?" "The ledger?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes," I said. "But you need to tell me the truth, Ernest. All of it. Were you working with Helen or against her?" He exhaled, his breath visible in the cold air. "Both. I worked with her because I thought we could dismantle the trust together. But when she realized what it meant to lose the money, she turned." Helen's voice was sharp. "You mean when I realized you wanted to control it yourself?" "I was trying to protect Margot," he snapped. "You wanted her gone." Helen's eyes met mine. "He's lying, Margot. Check the ledger. The signatures on the oldest entries? They're not mine. They're his. He's been part of Evermere from the beginning. I opened my bag and flipped through the pages. She was right. The oldest records bore Ernest's initials. I felt the world tilt. You were never trying to expose them, I whispered. You were one of them. He looked down, at first. Yes. But I tried to get out. I wanted us free of it, Margot. But once you're in Evermere, you don't leave alive. The fire. Gunfire cracked through the fog again, closer this time. Ernest grabbed my arm. They've found us. We don't have time. Helen pulled me the other way. No, Margot. If you go with him, you'll die. He's not saving you. He's tying up loose ends. Enough! I shouted. I pulled the gun from my coat, aiming between them. Both of you stop lying. Neither moved. The air smelled of damp earth and fear. Ernest's voice softened. You have the ledger. You hold all the cards. Just trust me one last time. Helen stepped forward. If you give it to him, you'll disappear just like the rest. You want the truth? The ledger isn't just money. It's identities. Aliases for people who never existed. You're one of them, Margot. Your name, your records, all built to protect the trust's money. You were created to inherit the system. My head spun. That's insane. Is it? She whispered. Check the birth records. There's no record of you before 1970. No hospital, no certificate, just a name, entered by Ernest. I froze. He said nothing. That silence told me everything. The final choice. The forest erupted in flames. One of the pursuers had thrown a flare that ignited the underbrush. Smoke swirled around us. The fire spread fast, devouring everything in its path. I could barely breathe. Ernest grabbed my hand. We have to go. Helen lunged for the ledger. No! That stays with me. I yanked it away. It stays with no one. Without thinking, I threw it into the fire. The leather cracked and curled as the pages blackened. Ernest screamed. Helen lunged toward the flames, but the heat forced her back. The ledger, decades of corruption, lies, blood, turned to ash before our eyes. Helen collapsed to her knees. Ernest just stared, hollow-eyed. It's over, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He looked at me. Something like sorrow or maybe relief flickered across his face. No, he said softly. It's just beginning. Then before I could react, he turned and vanished into the smoke. I never saw him again. Epilogue. The new identity. Weeks passed. Investigators called it a forest fire. The cabin burned to the ground. Helen was found unconscious by the road, claiming memory loss. Ernest was declared missing, again. I sold the house, closed my accounts, and moved 3 states away. But sometimes when I check my mail, I still get letters addressed to Margot Price, not Hayes. And last night, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a single photo, the burned ledger, restored, lying on a table, and a note written in Ernest's hand. You can't destroy what you were built to protect. Evermere lives through you. The autumn air had turned sharper that morning, slicing through Margot's coat as she made her way up the hill where Ernest had been buried. The quotation marks lived in her thoughts now, around every memory, every name, every truth. She stopped halfway, breath shallow, eyes glancing back to ensure no one had followed. It was nearly dawn, the sky still holding that gray-blue tone that feels like neither night nor day, the time when the world seems most likely to tell the truth. She crouched near the headstone, brushing away fallen leaves. Ernest Hayes, beloved husband and father, 1954 to 2024. The dates mocked her now. Margot pulled out the folded letter she had received 2 days ago. It had been slipped under her front door with no sender, the same messy handwriting as the first message at the funeral. If you still believe in me, find the locket you buried with me. It was never meant for you to see. The words had burned through her mind all night. She unzipped her bag and pulled out a small spade, her hands trembling but determined. If you're alive, Ernest, she whispered, then I'll find you. But if this is someone's game, They'll wish they never started it. The soil was still soft from last week's rain. Every scoop of dirt seemed to echo louder than it should, as though the ground was protesting. After a few minutes, her spade struck something metallic. Her breath caught. It was the edge of a small wooden box, not a coffin, not deep enough for one, hidden deliberately, carefully. She glanced around again, heart thundering. Then she pried it open. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket, the same one Ernest used to wear every day. But there was something else, a small USB drive wrapped in black ribbon. Margot froze. Ernest never even used a computer without help. She pocketed the drive and reburied the box, heart racing. She didn't notice the shadow watching her from behind the tree line. At home, Margot plugged the USB into her laptop. The screen blinked and a folder appeared. In case I disappear. She hesitated, then clicked. Inside were 3 files. They found out .mp4, trustnoone.txt, blueprint.jpg. She clicked the video first. Ernest's face appeared, gaunt and terrified, filmed in dim light. Margot, if you're seeing this, they've already come for me, he said, voice shaking. I didn't die. I had to disappear. Her hand flew to her mouth. They made it look like I was sick. The company, Grey Ridge Labs, they're behind something monstrous. The project I was consulting on wasn't medical, Margot. It was human. He leaned closer to the camera. They took people, sick ones, homeless ones, no one who'd be missed, and tested a neural serum. It reprograms memory, changes behavior. They wanted to use it to create perfect obedience. I tried to stop them, and that's when they turned on me. He coughed, looking around nervously. If you want to find me, don't trust anyone. Especially not Peter. Margot felt the room tilt. Peter, their son. The video ended with static. She sat frozen for minutes, unable to breathe. Then she opened the text file. You'll think I'm paranoid, but it's already inside our family. Peter's funding was never from his startup. It came from Grey Ridge. They used him. Maybe he's using them now. The locket you buried is your key. Find the vault beneath the old observatory. It's where the truth sleeps. The blueprint image showed a floor plan, a facility she vaguely remembered Ernest mentioning once, years ago, out near Redvale Hill. The next morning, Margot called Peter. Her voice was steady, controlled. Peter, sweetheart, she said softly. I found something of your father's. Something important. I think we should talk. Peter hesitated. What kind of something? Let's just say, something that might change everything. He agreed to meet her that evening, at the old observatory. By the time she arrived, the sun had vanished behind low clouds. The observatory loomed like a dead eye on the hill, its rusted dome cracked open. She parked far enough away that no one would see her car. Peter was already there, standing by the entrance with a flashlight. Mom! You shouldn't be out here. This place is condemned. So is your father, she replied quietly, stepping closer. Until he sent me a message. His face went pale. What do you mean? Don't play dumb, Peter. You were working with Grey Ridge. You took his research after he vanished. Don't lie. Peter shook his head. No. Mom, listen to me. Dad wasn't the man you think he was. Her fingers tightened around the locket in her pocket. Then explain this, she said, holding up the USB. Peter's jaw clenched. Where did you get that? You tell me. Before he could answer, the metal door behind him creaked open, and a beam of light swept across them. A voice echoed from the shadows. Both of you, inside. Now. They were surrounded. 3 figures in black coats stepped forward, faces obscured. One of them, tall, female, voice like steel, gestured with a pistol. Margot Hayes, she said. You were told to stay out of this. Your husband's death was necessary. Margot's heart pounded. Who are you? The woman smiled faintly. I'm the one who made sure your husband disappeared. He wasn't supposed to contact you. Peter's face twisted. You said you'd let her live. Margot turned sharply toward him. You knew? Peter swallowed hard. Mom, I didn't have a choice. They said Dad stole classified data. They were going to destroy everything. Our family, our names. Enough, the woman snapped. We'll finish this tonight. Before she could raise her weapon again, a sudden loud rumble shook the floor. Lights flickered from beneath the observatory, a hidden elevator shaft opening. And then, a voice echoed through the static speakers above them. Let them go. It was Ernest, alive. Margot's knees nearly gave way. The woman cursed, pulling a radio from her belt. Contain him! He's not supposed to… The floor hatch burst open. Smoke filled the room, alarms blaring. Through the chaos, Margot saw him, Ernest, disheveled, thinner, but alive. Margot, run, he shouted. She didn't think, she just moved. Peter froze, torn between his mother and the agents. Ernest grabbed Margot's hand, pulling her through the hatch and down a narrow stairwell into the underground tunnel. Gunshots echoed behind them. They ran until the sounds faded, collapsing in a dim corridor lit by emergency lights. Ernest coughed violently, clutching his side. Ernest, Margot gasped, touching his face. You're really… He nodded weakly. I had to fake everything. They wanted the formula, the serum. But I hid the real data. Peter didn't know. Margot's chest ached. Then what now? They'll find us. Ernest pulled a small keycard from his pocket. Not if we reach the vault first. Everything they've done, every experiment, every lie, it's all stored there. If we release it, they'll burn. She stared at him, torn between love and disbelief. You think the truth will save us? He smiled faintly. No, but it'll destroy them. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, the air grew colder, filled with the hum of hidden machines. The hallway opened into a vast underground chamber lined with glass pods, dozens of them. Inside each one was a sleeping person, some young, some old, all motionless. Margot stepped forward, horror spreading through her. Oh my God! Ernest nodded grimly. They called it Project Eden. They erased their memories, made them new people, obedient ones. It's what they wanted to do to me. A flicker of movement caught Margot's eye. One of the pods opened. A woman stepped out, disoriented, eyes blank. Ernest grabbed Margot's hand. We have to go. If they wake up the others. But before he could finish, a voice echoed behind them. Peter, holding the gun. Dad, he said quietly, eyes wet. You were supposed to stay gone. The hum of machines filled the vault, steady and cold, like the heartbeat of a monster too big to kill. Peter stood at the entrance, the gun trembling slightly in his hands. His face was pale, eyes hollowed with guilt. Dad, he said again, voice cracking, you should have stayed dead. Margot took a step forward. Peter, put it down. You don't understand what's happening here. He shook his head violently. No, Mom. You don't understand. I do know. I've been part of it from the start. The words hit her harder than any bullet. Ernest's expression hardened. They used you, Peter. Manipulated you. Peter let out a bitter laugh. Used me? Dad, they saved me. When you disappeared, when Mom almost lost the house, they gave me a job, a future. You think I didn't know what you were doing with those experiments? I saw the data. I saw how you tried to save people by rewriting their minds. That's not what it was, Ernest snapped. It was about healing trauma, restoring memory. They turned it into something else. Peter's finger tightened on the trigger. You built the machine, Dad. Not them. Margot's voice broke. Peter, please. You're talking like you don't see what's around you. Look at them. She pointed at the pods surrounding them. These people aren't alive. They're frozen. Peter's jaw clenched. They're safe. Controlled. No wars. No pain. No rebellion. Isn't that what Dad wanted? To fix humanity? Ernest's voice dropped to a whisper. Not like this. The silence that followed was unbearable. Only the low electric pulse from the pods filled the air. Finally, Peter stepped closer. "Give me the keycard, Dad. I'll end this cleanly. They'll erase all traces of what you did. You can disappear again. Mom won't get hurt." Margot's heart raced. "You mean they'll kill him?" Peter looked at her, something flickering in his eyes. Shame or hesitation, she couldn't tell. "Mom, I don't want to." "Then don't," she whispered. He hesitated, and in that split second Ernest moved. He lunged forward, knocking Peter's wrist aside. The gunshot rang out, deafening, ricocheting off metal walls. The bullet hit a control panel, sparks bursting through the air. Red lights flashed. A siren screamed overhead. "Security lockdown initiated," a robotic voice announced. The pods began to hiss one by one, releasing jets of cold mist. "Oh no," Ernest breathed. "They're waking up." Figures began to stir inside the glass chambers, hundreds of them, eyes opening in eerie synchronization. Their expressions were blank, their movements mechanical. "Peter!" Margot shouted. "Turn it off!" "I can't!" he yelled, slamming at the controls. "The system's gone autonomous." Once the failsafe triggers, the nearest pod shattered. A man stepped out, skin pale, veins faintly glowing blue. His eyes were empty. He looked at them and smiled. "Subject reactivated," a voice droned from overhead. "Commencing behavioral synchronization." The man began to walk toward them. Then another and another. Ernest grabbed Margot's hand. "We need to get to the core chamber. The override's there." "What about Peter?" she shouted. Ernest hesitated, then turned back to his son. "Come with us." Peter shook his head. "Go. I'll hold them off." But Margot wasn't leaving him. Not again. They ran through the maze of corridors, alarms echoing like screams. Behind them, the reanimated subjects were closing in, their footsteps eerily in sync, like one body moving in many forms. Ernest swiped his keycard at a reinforced door. It slid open to reveal a narrow stairway leading down to the facility's heart. Inside, a massive sphere hung suspended in the air, cables running from every direction. Blue light pulsed within it, like a brain made of glass. Margot stared in awe. "What is this?" Ernest's eyes were hollow. "Project Eden's neural core. It links to every subject. Destroy it, and they all wake up, free, but possibly dead. Leave it intact, and Greyridge controls them forever." He began typing commands on a nearby console. "I can trigger a cascade, but it'll wipe everything. Including this place, including me." Margot's voice trembled. "No. We just found each other again. I won't lose you twice." He looked up at her, tears in his eyes. "If we don't end it now, they'll turn the entire world into this, Margot." She shook her head, refusing to accept it. "We can expose them. Go public." "They own the public," he said softly. "They own the truth." A sound echoed behind them. Footsteps. Peter appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, blood on his sleeve. "They're coming," he gasped. "Mom, Dad, you have to finish it." Margot turned to him. "Come here, Peter." "Please." But he didn't move. His gaze was locked on the glowing sphere. "If you destroy it, you'll kill them all." "They're not alive," Ernest said. "Yes, they are." Peter's voice broke. "I met them. I talked to them, Dad. They were supposed to be rehabilitated. Soldiers, refugees, people who couldn't live with what they'd done. You gave them peace." Ernest's hands froze on the keyboard. Margot saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. "They're victims," Peter continued. "But maybe they don't want to wake up. Maybe they're better this way." Margot stepped closer. "No, Peter. You don't get to decide that for them. None of us do." The first of the reanimated figures reached the chamber entrance, faces expressionless. Dozens of them crowded the doorway, unmoving but blocking the only exit. The system voice echoed again. "Synchronization at 98%. Full integration in 60 seconds." Ernest's voice was steady now. "We're out of time." He turned to Peter. "You have to decide, son. You wanted control. Here it is. Peter looked from his father to the glowing core, torn apart inside. If I destroy it, what happens to you? Ernest hesitated. It's linked to my neural data, too. I used my own mapping as a prototype. When it collapses, so will I. Margot gasped. No! Peter lowered the gun. His hands trembled. I can't lose both of you. Ernest smiled faintly. You were never supposed to protect us, Peter. You were supposed to protect who you are. For a moment, time stopped. Then Peter closed his eyes, stepped forward, and pressed his palm against the console. Goodbye, Dad. He hit the override. The sphere flared with blinding light. A shock wave of energy pulsed through the vault, shattering glass, ripping through the air. The reanimated figures froze mid-step, their expressions softening, almost peaceful, before collapsing like puppets with cut strings. The machines screamed, sparks flying. Margot felt herself thrown backward, the world spinning into chaos. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. Smoke rose from the consoles. The core was gone, nothing left but molten metal and the faint smell of ozone. Ernest lay slumped near the terminal, his hand still on the keycard. His chest was still. Margot crawled to him, tears blurring her vision. Ernest, please. He opened his eyes just enough to meet hers. You were the only thing I ever trusted. Then he was gone. Peter stumbled over, face pale. Mom, we have to go. The place is collapsing. But she just sat there, holding Ernest's hand as the alarm screamed. Mom, please! Finally, she nodded, her body moving on instinct. They ran as the tunnels caved in behind them. The facility roared like a dying beast. They burst into the open air just as the ground erupted behind them, the observatory collapsing into itself. And then, silence. Weeks passed. The government claimed it was a chemical explosion. Grey Ridge Labs denied all involvement. Margot knew better. She sat on her porch one evening, the locket around her neck again. She had opened it only once since that day, to find a tiny slip of paper inside. If truth survives, so do we. Peter visited often now, quieter, humbled. Sometimes he just sat beside her, both staring at the horizon without words. He had burned the last of the Grey Ridge documents, but she could tell he hadn't forgiven himself. Do you ever wonder, he asked once, if we did the right thing? Margot looked at him, her eyes tired but resolute. The right thing doesn't always survive, but at least it doesn't haunt. That night, as she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her heart froze. The message read, I'm proud of you. E. She dropped the phone, staring in disbelief. Outside, across the dark fields, a faint light blinked in the distance, the kind of light a satellite beacon might give off. She whispered into the silence, Ernest? The wind answered, but somewhere deep inside she knew. The story wasn't over. They said the truth would set us free, but they never said what freedom would cost. Ernest's gone. The lab is gone. But some nights, I still hear my phone buzz. Maybe he's out there. Not alive, not dead. Just watching. Music swells slightly. If you've learned anything from my story, it's this. The dead don't always rest. And sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who bury you alive. Long pause. Then the faint echo of a message notification. A single ping. On-screen text. I'm proud of you. E. Fade out to black. Whispered female voice over static. Trust no one.